Welcome to Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness, Child Abuse Awareness, and hopefully prevention with Darlene J. Clark. Child abuse can be physical, sexual, emotional, neglect, child exploitation, abandonment. Be a part of the solution instead of part of the problem. Please like, subscribe, follow, and share. To be notified right away, please hit the bell. That you can join us live. Without further ado, I'm going to go on up and I start out with Bible verses, usually. Matthew 18, verse 6. But whoso shall offend one of these little ones which believe in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck, that he were drowned in the depth of the sea. And in Matthew 18, verse 10, take heed that ye despise not one of these little ones, for I say unto you, that in heaven their angels do always behold the face of my Father which is in heaven. Proverbs 28, verse 5, evil men understandeth not judgment, but they that seek the Lord understand all things. Isaiah 1:17, learn to do right, seek justice, defend the oppressed, take out the cause of the fatherless, plead the case of the widow. A lot of people want to just say, hey, we need to let bygones be bygones. It says learn to do right, seek justice, defend the oppressed. Colossians 3:21, fathers, do not embitter your children, or they will become discouraged. The copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is the use permitted by a copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. I'm going to make sure to. Hey there, Jackie. Good to see you. Thanks for coming. And our bucket list got a granddaughter's birthday today. We will say happy birthday to the granddaughter, too. Hello, everyone who's here. I see there's several in here. Thanks for coming. I want to make sure that y'all know that this will be some trigger warnings when we go over some of the stuff. Okay, so the national, we will show this. This will be one of the first links that I go to. It's going across the bottom of the page. You could go there, and there are the PDFs that you can load. It's even in Spanish. So I'm going to let that run across the bottom of the screen. But thank you so much, Jackie. That's a love, girl. Without further ado, I'll go ahead and go to the page. One of the pages. So right here, where the child abuse and neglect. What are child abuse and neglect? So first, so that y'all be able to listen to the video, I'm going to have to mute my mic. I do not mind sharing y'all how to do the settings because it works with StreamYard.
You may have heard about child abuse and neglect. Do you know what they mean? They include acts of commission and omission and are preventable. Child abuse and neglect include acts of commission and omission. What are acts of commission? Acts of commission are deliberate and intentional. However, harm to a child might not be the intended consequence. Some examples include physical abuse, sexual abuse, psychological abuse. What are acts of omission? Acts of omission are the failure to provide for a child's basic physical, emotional, or educational needs, or to protect the child from harm or potential harm. Some examples include physical neglect, emotional neglect, medical and dental neglect, educational neglect, inadequate supervision, exposure to violent environments. About 1 in 7 children experience some form of child abuse or neglect in the last year. But we know the problem is underreported. That's why a consistent definition is so important. The good news is, we can stop child abuse and neglect before it starts. What can we do? We can work together to promote safe, stable, and nurturing relationships and environments so all children reach their full potential. Some strategies to consider include strengthen economic supports to families, change social norms to support parents and positive parenting, provide quality care and education early in life, enhance parenting skills to promote healthy child development, intervene to lessen harms and prevent future risk. These strategies help create families, neighborhoods, and communities where every child thrives.
I can relate to this information, Darlene. They say 70 kids were made different. So they say, right? So we'll go on down. I want y'all to see this part down here. This is why I gave y'all the link. Right here, the Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention Resource for Action. It's 50 pages. And the link that y'all see scrolling at the bottom of the page, go to that link. I'm going to see if I could go like this and copy it to the bottom of, um, but I can't do it to you. Uh, but let me get it down here. I got it in the link in the chats right here. And it said it's also available in Spanish. See right here? This resource for action, formerly known as Technical Package, represents a select group of strategies based on the best available evidence to help prevent. And then it's also got a violence prevention and practice tools. So we're going to go further up without further ado. Let's go to Fast Facts. I'm going to go over here. What are child abuse and neglect? Child abuse and neglect are serious public health problems and adverse childhood experiences, that is ACEs. They can have long-term impacts on health. They can mess with your opportunities, and then they can mess with your well-being. This issue includes all types of abuse, all types, and neglect of a child under the age of 18 by a parent, caregiver, or another person in a custodial role, such as a religious leader, a coach, a teacher, that results in harm, potential for harm, or threat of harm to a child. There are four common types of abuse and neglect. This is how we want our children to be. We'll be free, happy, learning. Get that beautiful smile on that child. Children are playing happily. Physical abuse is intentional use of physical force that can result in physical injury. Examples include hitting, kicking, shaking, burning, or other shows of force against a child. Sexual abuse involves pressure or forcing a child to engage in sexual acts and includes behaviors such as fondling, penetration, and exposing a child to other sexual activities. Please see CDC's Preventing Child Sexual Abuse webpage for more information. Then there's emotional abuse refers to behaviors that harms a child's self-worth or emotional well-being. Examples include name calling, shaming, rejecting, withholding love, and threatening. Yes, even withholding love is emotional abuse. A lot of y'all said, at least I feed them, at least I clothe a child. Rejecting a child, shaming a child is abuse also, y'all. Calling your child names, no good. Tell them that they're no good. They'll never amount to anything. Calling them stupid, calling them dumb. Don't say you love your child if you're going to be right there name calling, because guess what? Your child ain't seeing it as love. Your child is seeing it as, my daddy don't love me. Mama don't love me. Neglect is a failure to meet a child's basic physical and emotional needs. These needs include housing, food, clothing, education, access to medical care, and having feelings validated and appropriately responded to. That means when you see having feelings validated and appropriately responded to, that means sit down and talk to your children. Don't say, hey, let's only talk to you when you do something bad. No, let your child sit down, validate how they feel. How are they going to grow emotionally and know that their feelings are accurate, and it's okay. It's okay to have the kind of feelings and emotions that they're having. And of course, housing, a roof over their head, food, clothing, education, access to medical care. All these are very important. For more information about preventing child abuse and neglect, definitions, please. And see, that's another pamphlet that I downloaded. Like one of the pamphlets, okay, that was the first one is this one, Child Abuse Neglect Prevention Resource for Action. That's the first booklet, the PDF that the link I just shared with y'all, right? It goes on and on to show this contents. Goes on and on. Right here, acknowledgments. Then this prevention resource represents a select group of strategies based on the best available evidence to help prevent child abuse and neglect. These strategies include strengthening economic support to families, changing social norms to support parents and positive parenting, providing quality care and education early in life, enhancing parenting skills to promote healthy child development, and intervening to lessen harms and prevent future risk. The strategies represented in the prevention resource include those with a focus on preventing child abuse and neglect from happening in the first place, as well as approaches to lessen the immediate and long-term harms of child abuse and neglect. So all these families that also say, I'm just going to let my kid be a kid. I'm going to let them misbehave. That's not guiding them structurally in the ways. That's even neglected them. Let them be on their own. Let them do whatever. That's not training them in the right ways that they need to go. They need to know discipline, things they don't need to be around. There's a lot more hurts and everything. If you do not let your kids go ahead and demean you, you tell them, no, that's not appropriate. You do get on to them about and train them in the right way. You don't just let them do whatever they want to. That's a form of neglect. You might not see it that way. You say, well, I'm going to let them do whatever. That is a form of neglect. Letting them do their own thing means that you don't want to be a part of them. You don't want to go in there and force them to sit down at the table, maybe have dinner together, sit down to find out how each other's days were, get together as a close knit family type of thing. These strategies range from a focus on individuals, families, and relationships to broader community and societal change. This range of strategies is needed to better address the interplay between individual family behavior and broader neighborhood community. Yeah, thank you so much, Jackie. And then a lot of times parents will say, well, I don't understand why this child behaves this way. But maybe you didn't sit down with the child and have these talks. They're letting the TV be their emotional stability. So they're getting their guidance from what the TV people, they're seeing the people on the TV do. Their guidance, police, when they get in trouble, stop yelling. Go to them. Treat them like they're an individual, that they're important. If you yelling at them, then they're going to be yelling at you later on, and you're going to be saying, "Why are they yelling so much?" Because that's all they know. They see it. They're doing it like because that's what you do. In particular, it articulates a select set of strategies and specific approaches that can create the context for healthy children and families and prevent child abuse and neglect. Goals 3 and 4 of the framework see below. There's commitment, cooperation, and leadership for numerous sectors, including public health, education, justice, healthcare, social services, business, labor, and government can bring about successful implementation of this resource. Then there's a prevention resource formerly known as a technical package as a compilation of a core set of strategies to achieve and sustain substantial reductions in a specific risk factor of outcome. They help communities and states prioritize prevention activities based on the best available evidence. This resource has three components. The first component is the strategy of the preventive direction of acts or actions to achieve the goal of preventing child abuse and neglect. The second component is the approach. The approach includes the specific ways to advance the strategy. This can be accomplished through programs, policies, and practices. The evidence of each of the approaches of preventing child abuse and neglect, or its associated risk factor, is included as a third component. This resource is intended to guide and inform prevention decision making in communities and states. There's essential for childhood steps to create safe, stable, nurturing environments. The Essentials for Childhood framework proposes steps communities can consider to promote the types of relationships and environments that help children grow up to be healthy and productive citizens. The framework is organized around four goals and related steps to promote safe, stable, and nurturing relationships and environments for children and families. Here's a four goal areas. Number one, raise awareness and commitment. Number two, use data to inform actions. Number three, create the context for healthy children and families through norms, change, and programs. Four, create the context for healthy children and families through policies. That's where it's got the Violence Prevention PDF Essentials for Childhood framework. Okay. There's preventing child abuse and neglect is a priority. That is very important. It is a priority. Child maltreatment includes all types of abuse and neglect of a child under the age of 18 by a parent, caregiver, or another person in a custodial role, but like a clergy, a coach, a teacher, that results in harm, potential harm, or threat or harm of the child. There are four common types of child maltreatment. And like I said, the person in a custodial role, like a babysitter too. A babysitter can also abuse your child. So there's physical abuse, physical force, such as hitting, kicking, shaking, burning, or other shows of force. We went over all this a few minutes ago. And it said child abuse and neglect is highly prevalent. Self-report data suggests that at least 1 in 7 children have experienced child abuse and or neglect in the last year. Not all children, however, experience abuse and neglect at the same rates. Younger children are more likely to experience fatal abuse and neglect. Thus, fatal abuse means they're more likely to experience deadly. They're more apt to get killed, to be murdered at the hands because of abuse. While 14 to 17-year-olds are more likely to experience non-fatal abuse and neglect. Race and ethnicity and family income are also factors that may affect a child's exposure. Child Protective Services data shows high rates of victimization among African American children. African American children experience abuse and neglect at rates that are nearly double those for white children. These differences are generally attributed to various community and societal factors, including poverty, as well as differences in reporting and investigation. And plus, they're getting these facts. Not every case, not everyone, the cases are put out there. So the numbers are not completely accurate. It's usually a lot higher than what this shows. Children living in families with low socioeconomic status have rates of child abuse and neglect that are 5 times higher than those of children living in families with a higher SES. Irrespective of data source, definitions, and measures, the true magnitude of child abuse and neglect is likely underestimated, and children of all ages, races, and ethnicities deserve safe, stable, and nurturing relationships and environments to achieve maximal health and life potential. As I said, it, it goes underreported. People that's got money and stuff like that, of course they're not going to report about there. So there's a lot that gets, like I said, not reported. And we find out a lot later years when the child has to come forward as an adult a lot of times and say, hey, this happened to me, for fear of their parent. Child abuse and neglect is associated with several risk factors. Risk for child abuse and neglect, perpetration, and victimization is influenced by a number of individual family and environmental factors, all of which interact to increase or decrease over time and within specific contexts. Risk factors for victimization include child age and special needs that may increase caregiver burden, developmental and intellectual disabilities, mental health issues, and chronic physical illnesses. Like the story we did earlier, Joe Clyde Daniel. He was autistic. He was not able to communicate. Well, he can communicate with his laughter, which is about it. But as far as being able to say what he needs, being able to talk about what's going on, he was nonverbal. Risk factors for perpetration include young parental age, single parenthood, large number of dependent children, low parental income, parental substance abuse, parental mental health issues, parental history of abuse or neglect, social isolation, family disorganization, parenting stress, intimate partner violence, poor parent-child relationships, community violence, and concentrated neighborhood disadvantage, e.g., high poverty, residential instability, high unemployment rates. Although risk factors provide information about who is at most at risk for being a victim or perpetrator of child abuse and neglect, they are not direct causes and cannot predict who will be a victim or a perpetrator. Like even some of the rich people, they sexually abuse their children, just like some of the poor people. They abuse, they neglect. They're powerful. That's how they do. It doesn't matter whether you're rich, you're poor, it doesn't matter. It happens in all. Whether you're white, black, African American, Jewish, German, Irish, Dutch, no matter what. It happens in all societies. Factors that protect or buffer children from being abused or neglected are known as protective factors. Supportive family environments and social networks consistently emerge as protective factors. However, other factors such as parental employment, adequate housing, and access to health care and social service may also serve to protect against child abuse and neglect. Unfortunately, no single factor tells the entire story about how and why child abuse and neglect occurs, and the risk and protective factors differ depending on the type of child abuse and neglect being studied. And it goes on to talk about the health and economic consequences of child abuse and neglect are substantial. Child abuse and neglect is associated with negative human, societal, and economic impacts. Children who are abused and neglected may suffer immediate physical injuries, cuts, bruises, burns, broken bones, as well as emotional and psychological problems. E, of which examples, a lot of these are like post traumatic stress, anxiety, which depression, nervousness, anxiety, afraid to get around people, hiding behind objects, not wanting to talk to anybody, coming like just a piece of the furniture, so to speak. Like they don't want to be acknowledged. They don't want to be seen. They don't want attention sometimes because all they're used to a lot of times is bad attention. Child abuse and neglect can also affect broader health outcomes, mental health, social development, and risk taking behavior into adolescence and adulthood. Strong evidence confirms that childhood violence increases the risk of injury, sexually transmitted infections, including HIV, mental health problems, delayed cognitive development, reproductive health problems, involvement in sex trafficking, and non-communicable diseases, which in turn can cause damage to the nervous, endocrine, circulatory, musculoskeletal, reproductive, respiratory, and immune systems. Which, thank God, with all that's happened to me, I praise God, I never had STD, thank God, with all the sex trafficking and stuff. Thank you, Lord. I do have a problem with comprehension skills because I had a test done and they said that because of a head injury when I was 9 years old, they pinpointed it when I did the test and they said that caused comprehension problems in when I read in the certain areas. So certain areas I'm having trouble with comprehension. That don't make me stupid. It don't make me dumb or anything. That makes it a fact. That's one of the repercussions I've had since being abused. Yeah, and I did have with mental health, depression, anxiety, PTSD, disassociation, amongst a lot of other problems. which a lot of times even had clinical depression, which I was suicidal. Thank God it did not turn out, and I'm not suicidal anymore. Okay, then there's reproductive health problems, which I had a lot of problems. I kept miscarrying. Um, there's so much damage inside from the SA and the trafficking that they told me that my kids are a true miracle that I've had any. And I said, well, I told you that my kids were a miracle. I told you that from the start. And of course, abuse can cause trouble to the nervous system, which I do have a lot of nerve problems, which, that just goes with the territory. Endocrine, circulatory, musculoskeletal, reproductive, respiratory, and immune. Which respiratory, I have trouble with that. Immune system, they also said people that's got like the skin problem, there's a certain, I can't, psoriasis, they said that's autoimmune also. We're learning about that, and I've got a lot of people that's got nervousness, parents middle class. Exactly, it can happen to any child. I think my parents were kind of like middle class as well. Even though there were 9 kids at home, they were still middle class. They rented a home. We worked on a farm. I was middle class from back then. But they both worked. She was a secretary. He was a truck driver. Also, he also, what am I going to say? Certain kind of engineer, mechanical engineer. So they made pretty good money, if you know what I'm saying there. Given the high prevalence of child abuse and neglect and its vast consequences, the associated economic impact is substantial. In the United States, the total lifetime economic burden associated with child abuse and neglect was approximately 124 billion in 2008. What's sad about that? Probably a lot higher than that. Some of the kids died. Some of these children died, and there was no care for them. That's what's so sad about that. They're saying it costs 124 billion. Much progress has been made in understanding how to prevent child abuse and neglect. But want to listen to a child. When a child tells you something, listen to them. Don't say, no, that couldn't happen. Well, you put them back in the home if y'all even knew the person was abused, just to hear, like I was talking the other day, y'all knew that I was abused and stuff, and y'all were waiting for me to have to say it, even though y'all had a safe place for me to go to. But I forfeited getting the safety because I was too scared to tell. Excuse me, something's wrong with the equation there. It was a program. Y'all knew that this was happening, and y'all already had a safe place for whomever or whatever. Get them out. Don't keep them in it. I'm sure I'm not the only one that's lived through this. There's been plenty of them. And they were bad about even asking the parents, and parents would end up saying, no, they fell. I would have never done that. And they still let the parent have the child. Child abuse and neglect is a result of the interaction of a number of individual, family, and environmental factors. Consequently, there is strong reason to believe that the prevention of child abuse and neglect requires a comprehensive focus that cuts key sectors of society: public health, government, education, social service, and justice. See, like I said, with the thing about it is, with the police knowing about it, with the justice knowing about it, with a lot of the people who were part of my abuse was in with the government and stuff. People, they were in with the owner businesses and all this kind of stuff. To get with the program, practice what you're going to preach. Don't stick it to just being like, okay, we're going to get on to the people that's parents or teachers or something like that, but what about getting on to the people that's actually got businesses and everything? Why are you still sticking up for them people that's got money? Why are you covering for the people that's got money and power? Do something about it, people. Don't just keep saying that this needs fixed and we can fix it and we can stop it. We can't stop it unless you do your part of the job that's going to get these people that's got high power and stuff. People in power. No, 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 no. It needs stricken from all avenues, not just for the people who's poor or middle class or whatever. Each of the various forms of violence are interrelated and share many risk and protective factors, consequences, and effective approaches of prevention. Given the overlap of the risk and protective factors of child abuse and neglect and other forms of violence, it stands to reason that the primary prevention of child abuse and neglect can prevent other forms of violence or abuse. Just note, too, child abuse, it escalates. One time might be a little smack. The next time might be a little harder smack. The next time it might be thrown across the room. The next time, just thrown down some stairs. No telling what. It escalates, people. Strategies that support the development of safe, stable, and nurturing relationships between parents or caregivers and their children can be key in preventing early development of violent behavior in children. Like I said, there was some sadistic things that was done to me. It's in my book. My stepmom would even dip mine and my twin sister's nose in cow manure. That was sick, sadistic. Sorry. Emergent evidence suggests that by stemming the early development of violent behaviors, such as relationships, can also reduce many types of violence occurring in adolescence and early adulthood, such as youth violence, intimate partner and dating violence, sexual violence, and self directed violence. And then there's accessing the evidence. This prevention resource includes programs, practices, and policies with evidence of impact on child abuse and neglect, victimization, perpetration, or risk factors for child abuse and neglect. To be considered for inclusion in this resource, the program or policy selected had to meet at least one of these criteria. A. Meta-analysis. Excuse me. Meta. I'm having trouble saying it today. I'm sorry. Analysis or systematic reviews showing impact on child abuse and neglect, victimization, or perpetration. Okay, B. Evidence from at least one or more rigorous randomized controlled trial or quasi-experimental design. Evaluation study that found significant preventive effects on child abuse and neglect, victimization, or perpetration. Meta and C. Meta and analysis or systematic reviews show an impact on risk factors for child abuse and neglect, victimization, or perpetration. And D. Evidence from at least one rigorous quasi-experimental design evaluation study that found significant impacts of risk factors for child abuse and neglect, victimization, or perpetration. Finally, consideration was given to the likelihood of achieving beneficial effects of multiple forms of violence. No evidence or harmful effects on specific outcomes or with particular subgroups. And feasibility or implementation in a U.S. context and the program policy or practice was evaluated in another country. Yeah, what would you do? You go like that and tell a teacher, it's degrading to when imagine the cow pieces on your nose, right? It's degrading enough. How are you gonna tell them? And really, you blame yourself also. Like, what did I do so bad? That was too disturbing to even talk about and tell a teacher or tell anybody. My stepmom would smear my nose in cow manure and make me go to town with it on her nose. Excuse me? How would I go about doing that? How many people have seen us with that on our faces and said nothing? Mine and my twin sisters only. Okay. Within this resources, some approaches do not yet have research evidence demonstrating impact on the rates of child abuse and neglect, victimization, or perpetration, but instead are supported by evidence indicating impacts on risk factors for child abuse and neglect, parenting stress, parental mental health. In terms of the strength of the evidence, programs that have demonstrated effects on child abuse and neglect outcomes provide a higher level of evidence, but the evidence base is not that strong in all areas. And such things, it makes me wonder, also, I'm sorry if I keep going back for the examples of what happened with my family, but there was an uncle, my daddy's brother, that would come to the house, and I asked my aunt about 3 years ago, 3 to 5 years ago on the phone, said, how come y'all stopped coming over? Said, your daddy would shoot at y'all, but then he started shooting at my kids too with a BB gun. So Uncle Tommy, which was my daddy's brother, refused to bring his kids back around, so because they didn't want shot at. I was thinking, well, why didn't anybody call for help for us? Why did why just know that this happened? Why didn't you go inform the police about us being shot? Y'all think it's okay to give the examples? Then I'm going to get on down to the contextual and cross-cutting themes strategy, strengthen economic supports to families, strengthening household financial security, family-friendly work policies. But the thing about it is, yes, there's going to be strengthening with money, monetarily, but some things you are not going to know that this person is victimizing or abusing a child, and you might be helping them in other ways, which is not good. Change social norms to support parents and positive parenting. These are the cases that they know about. And there's some people who are great, awesome, amazing parents, and the government and the system failed them, took the kids away from these good parents and put them with the perpetrator. So y'all are parts of the problem yourself when y'all do these actions. Take the kids back to the parents who protected them, who loved them, who kept them away from these sadistic child sexual abusers and stuff. That's how y'all could fix it. Fix y'all's mistakes on what y'all are doing yourself. I'm sorry, y'all. I've got a lot of opinions. Provide quality care and education early in life. Preschool enrichment with family engagement. Improve quality of child care through licensing and accreditation. Okay, like there's foster care people, the CPS and all that. And we heard how CPS is already one of the main problems, taking the kids away from when they shouldn't be taken away. But then there's cases when kids were kept in with the abusive people. The strategies and approaches that have been included in this resource represent different levels of social ecology with efforts intended to impact the community and societal levels. So I'm going to close out this one and I'm going to show y'all the example of the other booklet that I have here from that same company, which is with a child maltreatment surveillance right here. I could go on and on. Scrolling down. It's got the definitions of omission, the definitions of psychological abuse. It says in 14. I'm going to get on down to that. I'd rather go down to the definitions and stuff. Okay. They said 14, but I don't see it. Maybe it's chapter 14. Okay. Child maltreatment is any act or series of acts of commission or omission by a parent or other caregiver that results in harm, potential for harm, or threat of harm of a child. Where acts of commission child abuse, words or overt actions that cause harm, potential harm, or threat to harm of harm to a child. Acts of commission are deliberate and intentional. However, harm to a child may or not be the intended consequence. Intentionally, intentionality only applies to the caregiver's acts, not the consequences of those acts. For example, a caregiver may intend to hit a child as punishment. Hitting the child is not accidental or intentional, but not intend to cause a child to have a concussion. The following types of maltreatment involve acts of commission: physical abuse, sexual abuse, and psychological abuse. Acts of omission, which is and child neglect, the failure to provide for a child's basic physical, emotional, or educational needs, or protect a child from harm or potential harm. That acts of commission, harm to a child may or not be the intended consequence. The following types of maltreatment involve acts of omission: failure to provide physical neglect, emotional neglect, the physical neglect, the physical needs, housing, food, clothing, emotional neglect, not supporting, not showing love, rejecting, medical dental neglect, educational neglect, failure to supervise, inadequate supervision, exposure to violent environments. We know of that in the Summer Wells case. Caregiver. A caregiver is a person or people who, at the time of the maltreatment, is in a permanent primary caregiver or temporary substitute caregiver custodial role. In a custodial role, the person is responsible for care and control of the child and for the child's overall health and welfare. I want to tell you all something. I did a video on Miss Texas show, and one of my family members said, my mama, talking about my stepmom, but it was one of my siblings, stepsisters or whatever, said she never had custody of you. And I thought that was kind of weird because if she didn't have custody of me, how come she was getting a government check for me until I got out of the house? So good point there. If she didn't have custody of me, why would she be getting a government check, right? Primary caregivers must live with a child at least part of the time and can include, but are not limited to, a relative or biological, adopted, step, or foster parent, a legal guardian, or their intimate partner. Substitute caregivers may or not reside with the child and can include clergy, coaches, teachers, relatives, babysitters, residential facility staff, or others who are not the child's primary caregivers. Harm. Any acute disruption caused by the threatened or actual acts of commission or omission to a child's physical or emotional health. See, it don't have to just be physical. It does not have to just be physical. So if they actually A teacher does these things to a child and it threatens their emotional health and everything, by all means, parents, do something about it. Do something about it. Just do not, just let it happen. That teacher don't need to be a teacher, or that teacher needs to be reprimanded so that it cannot harm any other children. Disruptions can affect the child's physical, cognitive, or emotional development. That a harm occurs when a parent or caregiver expresses an intention or gives signs or warnings through the use of words, gestures, or weapons to communicate the likelihood of inflicting harm to the child. The other harm can be explicit or implicit. Explicit threats would include such acts as pointing a gun at a child or raising a hand as if to strike the child. Implicit threats would include such acts as kicking holes in walls or breaking doors down. I don't remember the times my stepmother used to hold my head under a sink full of water, but she used to tell me this as a teenager. She said, I stopped your temper tantrums when you were 4 years old by holding your head down in a sink full of water until you lost consciousness. She told me that quite a bit. Disruption of physical health includes, but is not exclusive to, excuse me, physical injuries, avoidable illnesses, and inadequate nutrition. And here, I think I need to make this bigger since it seems like it's getting smaller right here. Physical injuries or physical harm, including death, occurring to the body from exposure to thermal. Okay, don't put your kids outside and lock the door. All temperatures, mechanical, electrical, or chemical energy interacting with the body in amounts of rates that exceed the threshold of physiological tolerance, or from the absence of such essentials as oxygen or heat. Yeah, like holding my head down in a sink full of water. Yeah, I had an absence of oxygen, didn't I? Physical injuries can include physical marks, burns, lacerations, contusions, abrasions, broken bones, internal injuries, organ damage, poisoning, asphyxiation, or death because of physical injury sustained. And I'm sure a lot of y'all know what asphyxiation, which is like strangulation type of thing. Cut off from being able to, like even hanging, different kind of stuff. Avoidable illnesses are those illnesses that are preventable or induced as a result of denial of medical care, withholding of medication, or failure to immunize against typical childhood diseases. Which right now I do not trust a lot of the immunizations because of the stuff that's going on with our stuff today. Okay, examples include sexually transmitted disease, Munchausen syndrome by proxy, pediatric condition falsification, and deliberate failure to immunize against a vaccine preventable disease. Okay, like we know about if somebody's got the flu or got pneumonia and then you don't give them medical attention, that's something I would be upset about too. Inadequate nutrition is defined as a failure by the caregiver to provide nutrition that is adequate for growth and physical development. Examples include hunger, malnutrition, and failure to thrive due to poor nutrition. 6. Discrepancies in the definition of caregiver often occur in state laws. Users of this document should familiarize themselves with the child abuse and neglect laws in their state when designing surveillance systems. Intimate partner is defined as included current spouses, including common law spouses, current non marital partners, including heterosexual or same sex dating, and heterosexual or same-sex boyfriends and girlfriends. Former marital partners included divorced spouses, former common law spouses, and separated spouses, and former non-marital partners included former heterosexual or same-sex dates and former heterosexual or same-sex boyfriends and girlfriends. Intimate partners may be cohabitating, but need not be. The relationship need not involve sexual activities. Users of this document would need to know what qualifies as common law marriage in their state. Some states don't have common law marriage, so that would not be considered. Disruption of emotional health can include anxiety problems, disruption of social functioning, impaired relationships, depression and depressive symptoms, eating disorders, post traumatic stress, including post traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, externalizing behaviors, aggression, lack of education, school failure, delinquency, or substance abuse. Harm can be immediate, such as broken bones, or delayed, depression, PTSD, anxiety. Child, any individual from birth through 17 years of age at the time of maltreatment. For the purpose of this document, maltreatment of an adult age 18 or older is not considered child maltreatment, regardless of the emotional or intellectual age of the person. Okay? For the purposes of this document, the following are irrelevant to determine whether child maltreatment has occurred. Caregiver's intent to harm the child, caregiver's legal liability for the maltreatment, caregiver's economic means, caregiver's religious or cultural norms. Then here's the definitions of acts of commission child abuse. For the purposes of this document, an incident of child maltreatment is defined as an event documented by CPS, law enforcement, the medical system, or other reporting sources, the school in which child maltreatment is alleged or confirmed. So here's the physical abuse is defined as the intentional use of physical force against a child that results in or has the potential to result in physical injury. Physical abuse includes physical acts ranging from those which do not leave a physical mark on the child to physical acts which cause permanent disability, disfigurement, or death. That's by Barnett, Manley, or Shishetti. Physical abuse can result from discipline or physical punishment. What he said right here. The amount of times I was ill as a child and my parents never took me to a doctor. You'd get sent home from school because I was so ill some days. I would go off on me and said, I better be ill. Oh man, I'm so sorry you endured that. Crazy. Or else, he would say. Whoa, that's not right. I'm sorry you had to go through that, Jackie. You didn't deserve that. You deserved to find out what was going on. Physical acts can include hitting, kicking, punching, beating, stabbing, biting, pushing, shoving. Yes, when you shove your child, throwing, pulling, dragging, dropping, shaking, strangling, choking, smothering, burning, scalding, and poisoning. One of the times my stepmom had me stand in the bathtub and she actually poured hot water or hot coffee. I can't remember what the liquid was. She poured it over my feet. Burnt me really bad. She used to drag me by the hair of my head through the house. All kind of different stuff. She did a lot of this other stuff too, but exceptions. Physical injuries to the anal or genital area or surrounding areas, genital bruising or tearing, internal injuries resulting from penetration by different things. I'm not going to say these words. Trigger warning, trigger warning, trigger warning, y'all. Y'all can see the words right here without me saying it. Okay, that occurred during attempted or completed sexual abuse or other physical injuries that result from attempted or completed sexual abuse, bruises due to restraint, hitting, pushing, or considered sexual abuse and do not constitute physical abuse. Thank you. Let's see what here. Once cut my foot because I was paddling in a wee river and needed stitches, but my parent never took me to the hospital right away. I was limping because my foot was so sore. School sent straight to hospital by dinner time. I had to get stitches. I'm so sorry. Trigger warnings. Thank you. The sexual abuse. Some of these words I'm not going to read out loud. Y'all, I'm making it big enough where y'all can read it yourself. Like I said, trigger warnings. Any completed or attempted non-completed sexual act, sexual contact with, or exploitation, non-contact sexual interaction of a child by a caregiver. The sexual acts include contact involving penetration, however slight, between, I am not going to read these words, just of the child or another individual. Sexual acts also include penetration, however slight, of the, okay, I know that y'all can read all this. Okay. Genital or genital contact includes that. Mouth on genital contact includes this. Okay. I'm sorry if there's anything where this is bothersome, but this needs discussed. Sexual acts can be performed by the caregiver on the child or by the child on the caregiver. A caregiver can also force or coerce a child to commit a sexual act on another individual, a child or an adult. The abuse of sexual contact includes intentional touching, either directly or through the clothing of the following: of the genitalia, the anus, groin, the breast, the inner thigh, and the buttocks. Abusive sexual contact does not involve penetration of any of the above. Abusive sexual contact can be performed by the caregiver on the child or by the child on the caregiver. Abusive sexual contact can also occur between a child and another individual, adult or child, through force or coercion by a caregiver. Abusive sexual contact does not include touching required for the normal care of attention to the child's daily needs. Okay, non-contact sexual abuse. Non-contact sexual abuse does not include physical contact of a sexual nature between the caregiver and the child. Non-contact sexual abuse can include the following. Number one, acts which expose a child to sexual activity, pornography, voyeurism of the child by an adult, intentional exposure of a child to exhibitionism. Yes, if y'all are watching movies that's got nudity in front of your child, did you know that's considered that as well? So y'all be careful what you're showing your children, what movies and all. Filming of a child in a sexual manner, depiction, either photographic or cinematic, of a child in a sexual act. There was a friend of mine whose husband was watching a rated R or rated, I think it was a rated R movie, and some of them they still got nudity. And his child at home, they don't even have a TV. You know, the parents. And all of a sudden, the kid goes, "I know how a man's penis looks." And she's like, "How do you know that?" "Oh, I walked in there and it was on the TV." And he was watching it. So, yes, by all means, people watch out. Sexual harassment of a child, quid pro quo, creating a hostile environment because of comments or attention of a sexual nature by a caregiver to a child, or prostitution of a child, which there is not really prostitution of a child, that is sexually abusing, that is trafficking a child. The child is not a prostitute. So don't say prostitute of a child. I do not look at it as prostitution. That's sexual trafficking. The child has no say so. I was told that I was sold into child prostitution, but it was not prostitution, it was trafficking. But they did. It was not my mistake, it was the parents. Sexual trafficking is defined as an act of transporting children across international borders through deception for forced sexual activity such as prostitution or sexual slavery. But now the sexual trafficking is no longer just turned as that. It can be in your own home. So they get money or anything for doing this to a kid. You don't have to transport. Get money wherever they're doing these heinous acts to children. Terminology is now different. The psychological abuse, intentional caregiver behavior, act of commission that conveys to a child that he or she is worthless, flawed, unloved, unwanted. Don't tell a kid they're a mistake, okay? Endangered or valued only in meeting another's needs. Psychological abuse can be continual, chronic, and pervasive, or episodic, triggered by a specific context or situation, caregiver substance use or abuse. Psychologically abusive behaviors may include blaming, belittling, degrading, intimidating, terrorizing, isolating, restraining, confining, corrupting, exploiting, spurning, or otherwise behaving in a manner that is harmful, potentially harmful, or insensitive to the child's developmental needs, or can potentially damage a child psychologically or emotionally. There's terrorizing, includes caregiver behavior that is life threatening, makes the child feel unsafe, situations that are likely to physically hurt, kill, or abandon the child. I don't know if y'all know that my birth mom used to abandon us in a grocery store. When I was 4 years old, my aunt got tired of picking us up at the grocery stores and stuff, and she would not let my mother come back and get me a week later whenever she decided to come back. My aunt put a stop to it. Sets unrealistic expectations of the child with threat of loss, harm, or danger if expectations are not met, and threatens or perpetrates violence against a child or a child's loved one or objects, including toys, pets, or other possessions. For example, placing a child in unpredictable or chaotic circumstances would be considered terrorizing, or as would be placing a child in a situation reasonably considered dangerous by either child or another adult. Isolating psychological isolation occurs when a caregiver prevents or minimizes a child's contact with others. So they would, my stepmom would have me to go to the back of the house, to the bedroom. Somebody pulled up in the yard. Not all the time. It just started happening later on, after my other siblings that were full-blooded had done at the house. Failure to provide. Failure by a caregiver to meet a child's basic physical, emotional, medical, dental, or educational needs, or combination thereof. Failure to provide include the following: Physical neglect. Caregiver fails to provide adequate nutrition, hygiene, or shelter. Or caregiver fails to provide clothing that is adequately clean, appropriate size, or adequate for the weather. Several examples follow. Nutrition. A 9-year-old makes dinner several times per week because the caregiver they're sleeping, away, or otherwise unavailable. A child misses or is denied meals on numerous occasions over time. A child is diagnosed as being severely malnourished. When I was 11 years old, when the court system put me with my supposed birth mother, she told me I needed to get a job. I needed to go sell my body if I wanted to eat. I refused to do that. So while she was gone from the house, I would sneak into the house and make myself mayonnaise, ketchup, salt, and pepper sandwiches. At times she did have peanut butter and jelly, but a lot of times there wasn't nothing, so I had to make myself a condiment sandwich. She would not cook for me or anything, but I refused to go and sell myself at this time. So, and then I would go and I would sleep in the back seat of the car. Hygiene. Child is dirty, smells bad, or has unwashed hair. Child's living situation is unsanitary. Dirty dishes and spoiled food are left on the kitchen table and counter. Shelter living arrangements for the child and family are unstable for 2 weeks or more. The residence is infested with roaches or vermin. Residence is unheated or inadequately heated because caregivers have failed to ensure heat available. Clothing. The child always wears clothing that is too small. The child is not given a warm coat and gloves when the weather is cold. Emotional neglect. Caregiver ignores a child or denies emotional responsiveness or adequate access to mental health care. Caregiver does not respond to infant cries or older child's attempts to interact. Kids matter. Medical dental neglect. Caregiver fails to provide adequate access to medical vision or dental care for the child. Examples include the following. Caregiver does not administer prescribed medications. Caregiver refuses to take the child for needed medical attention or seek timely medical attention. Like one time, my son, my he was about 3 years old, 2 or 3. Was before I had my second child with my marriage, and my ex-husband spun the merry-go-round so fast, and it flung my son off the merry-go-round. Well, I got to my son, he had his mouth tightly gripped, and he just lay there. People just passed, and they did not want to help, and I could not believe that. And it's like somebody called 911. I told my husband, "Let's get him to the hospital." "Oh, he'll be fine." So no, let's get him to the hospital. So we go ahead, and instead he goes to his aunt's house. She said, "Get him to the hospital right now." So just because his aunt said get him to the hospital, we went ahead and went to the hospital. Well, they said he was okay, and then we had to end up taking him back to the hospital later because there actually was a guy that read the scans, and they seen a rock in his head. And so I had to take him back to have the rock removed from his head, from his scalp. But I was so mad that when my husband would not, he fought against having him taken to the hospital, and yet my son was unconscious. Crazy, man. Educational neglect. Caregiver fails to provide access to adequate education. Examples include caregiver allows child to miss 25 or more days in one academic year without excuse. Caregiver does not enroll the child in school. Caregiver encourages a child under 16 years of age to drop out of school. Failure to supervise. Failure by the caregiver to ensure a child's safety within and outside the home, given the child's emotional and developmental needs. Inadequate supervision. Failure by the caregiver to ensure that the child engages in safe activities and uses appropriate safety devices to ensure that the child is not exposed to unnecessary hazards or to ensure appropriate supervision of an adequate substitute caregiver. Even even my friend Will Pennington that I got people to pray for recently, he was him and his friends were bad about experiments, right? So they were working on a rocket inside the house, and my friend William had told his friend, "Do not let them two wires connect. Do not let them touch." And he just kept playing around with them and kept playing around with it. And guy did. Next thing you know, the rocket went up and it stuck into the bedroom ceiling. Okay, the parents made sure they went home as a kids. Like, okay. Inadequate supervision, sometimes called supervisional neglect, includes occasions when a caregiver knowingly fails to protect the child from maltreatment perpetuated by a substitute caregiver. Under such conditions, a primary caregiver's behavior will be considered neglect only if the maltreatment was recognized and allowed to occur. Regardless of the primary caregiver's knowledge of the maltreatment, substitute caregiver's behavior will be considered maltreatment. Exposure to violent environments. Caregiver intentionally fails to take available measures to protect the child from pervasive violence within the home. We heard a lot on videos where the people were cussing and yelling and that they got a gun and they're going to do this and do that. And you hear the kids screaming in the background, "Help me, help me, help me." Oh man, that's just very disturbing, isn't it? For example, a caregiver who sells illicit drugs out of the child's home exposes the child to a violent environment, or a school bus driver, temporarily caregiver, who allows a student to be routinely victimized by another student for riding the bus without taking steps to intervene. So you need to notify school administrators that they also expose a child to violent environment if they do nothing about it too. Exposure of a child to violence between caregivers in the home may also qualify as exposure to a violent environment. Like if you see the daddy hitting the mama, you see another kind of violence, particularly if the caregivers do not take available measures to protect the child from exposure. But in instances where the caregiver is being victimized by a partner and alternatives to protect the child are not available, or the caregiver is unaware of alternatives, the caregiver is not maltreating the child. Co-occurrence of multiple types of abuse and neglect, multiple forms of maltreatment often coexist, as described in these examples. Police find a 20-month-old child with bruises on extremities, cigarette burns to the forehead and upper chest, and signs of dehydration. The child was at home with a male caregiver who was high on opium. In this instance, physical abuse, failure to provide adequate nutrition, failure to protect the caregiver is under the influence of drugs and unable to care for the child, and psychological abuse has occurred. Okay. Now here's another example. Paramedics find a 2.5-year-old child. The undressed child was walking outside in the winter and had belt pattern bruises on the legs and the trunk. The child also had ethyl alcohol in his blood system. In this example, physical abuse, failure to provide adequate clothing, and failure to protect an occupied child have occurred. Upon reading a school report card, the caregiver parent slaps the child's face, withholds food, and berates the child's ability until better marks are produced. In this scenario, physical abuse, failure to provide, and psychological abuse have occurred. Okay, and then, like I said, there's more that goes. This is like 149, let's see, 148 pages. That is also a rundown on getting this stuff. This is how big the problem is. That's how much it costs. We read about some of the consequences. That's where you get the 50 pages at, and it said it's in volume in Spanish also. I'm fixing to share y'all probably a video on this where it said this at this site where abuse prevention systems safety. Come on now, trying to get the highlight. I'm going to scroll this at the bottom of the page for y'all to see as well. Go to banners, create a banner, page. Okay, this is where I'm at now. I'll post this and paste it down here in the comments as well. All right. So this awareness training. This foundational training is the single most important step an organization can take to reduce the risk of child sexual abuse. When staff members and volunteers are equipped with the eyes to see the grooming process of an abuser and key indicators of child sexual abuse, they're better able to protect children in the care. There's an effective child safety system requires all 5 parts. I did not sign up now because it costs money to sign up here. But if you wanted to, you could get you an account. But I'm not going to do it. There's sexual abuse awareness training, skillful screening, policies and procedures, background checks, monitoring, and oversight. So I'm about to show this video, so I will go ahead and change the settings so that y'all could listen to the video. Y'all will not be able to hear me.
Child serving staff members and volunteers commonly believe that child sexual abuse wouldn't happen in their organization or program, or that no one they know could be an abuser. This illusion of safety is widespread and is dangerous to both the organization and the children it serves. Sexual abusers find places where the barriers of entry are lower and the trust is high, an easy in. In our culture, barriers to entry tend to be lower in programs where leadership fails to understand child sexual abuse risk. This sexual abuse awareness training helps child serving organizations raise the bar. When volunteers and staff members learn the facts, they are better able to protect children in their care. Child serving staff members and volunteers commonly believe that child sexual abuse wouldn't happen in
See right there what they said they commonly would not believe that it would happen? That's when you got to really watch out. And we know that many believe, that's what it said, many believe that child sexual abuse can't happen in their organization, or that no one they know could be an abuser. This illusion of safety is often found in schools, camps, and many other child servant organizations. This illusion is dangerous to both the organization and the children it serves. Sexual abusers find those places where the barriers of protection are the lowest. where people are more trusting and where fewer barriers exist between service applicants and children. In our culture, barriers to entry tend to be lower in child servant organizations. We help you raise the bar, and the first step is to better understand the problem. When volunteers and staff members learn the facts, better able to protect children in their care. So, like for instance, I'll show you what it says to sign up now, so you see what it costs. Okay, single user is $10. Abuse prevention systems membership 250 a year. That's what I was saying. I would not be able to afford that. Past that. What do we need to know to protect our children? Sexual abuse training is key in equipping staff members and volunteers to better understand the risk of child sexual abuse. Sorry, typically our beliefs are shaped by our personal experience, the experiences of our friends and family and the media. For most of us, sexual abuse of children is not a reality we want to confront. So many of us choose to remain uninformed. Media coverage is incomplete, leaving us with an inaccurate picture of the scope, breadth, and shape of child sexual abuse. To better protect children in our programs, we must realize that the problem is significant and growing, and that the abusers have no visual profile. We must be able to recognize predators behaviorally. Our sexual abuse awareness training equips employees and volunteers with the eyes to see the grooming process of an abuser, the key indicators of child sexual abuse. We're going to go over that one day, over the different aspects of the grooming process and such. And I want y'all to see this. This is also Better Violence. It's in the tools and trainings, and I click that. Strengthen your prevention toolkit. There's ACE infographics, can prevent childhood adversity. So it's actually got things in here that you can actually see. See, there's understanding ACEs, the emotional, and all this. I think that this site would be very beneficial to y'all to be able to look at. And I will go ahead and put right here CDC better thing copy. Let me put it down in here again, right here. Paste. Put it in the comments. Put it in a banner. Create a banner. Or we could tick it across the bottom there. Because this right here, this training is awesome. Go to Community Health Sim also. That's about 20 minutes. Connecting the dots. Well, let's see. The ACE, the infographic, is the childhood experiences, good and bad, shape our health, well-being, and livelihoods over a lifetime. This infographic uses data from the CDC Kaiser Permanente Adverse Childhood Experiences ACE study and recent findings to show how ACEs and prevention can affect people's lives and society. Then there's the Community Health Sim, serve as a consultant in Meadowville, a city working to address rising healthcare costs, safety concerns, and education challenges with limited resources. This game-like experience demonstrates that many issues are related to violence in our communities. Put your violence prevention knowledge to the test today. That's what that is. Connecting the dots. Different types of violence are connected and often share the same root causes. This training explores how different types of violence can take place in the same house, in the same neighborhood, at the same time, or at different stages of life. By the end of the training, you will understand the overlapping causes of different types of violence and what can protect against violence. But like for instance, I'll click right here and you see how this goes right here when we click on it. It says learn an introduction to the links between multiple forms of violence, connect, identify shared risk and protective factors, and explore learn how others are using a shared risk and protective factor approach to prevent violence. Okay, so go back here. This dating matters is a policy development and evaluation is a key component of a comprehensive approach to teen dating violence prevention. This online interactive resource provides guidance and evaluation of teen dating violence related policies. The guide to policy is one component of the dating. I'll show y'all for a second what's going on. It's an interactive guide, overview, problem identification. I mean, it goes on and on. And then you click on the different problem identification and such and like that. And it goes understanding in the community. It goes full scale like this. So y'all need to really go in there and do a study on this because I think this will help a lot. Then there's training, data matters, training for educators. Data matters toolkit strategies for individuals, peers, families, schools, and neighborhoods to help prevent teen dating violence. It focuses on teaching 11 to 14-year-olds the skills needed to have a healthy relationship and prevent negative relationship behaviors. An evaluation found it works to stop teen dating violence before it starts in middle school. Get everything you need to carry out dating matters in your community. There is evaluation, putting evaluation to work, evaluate your violence prevention programs, like at work. Then it just goes on and on. Engage in business, adverse childhood experiences. Let's see what this is. It's online training here. I'm checking it out with y'all. It's saying learn and prevent ACEs. Take the trainings, training modules. Introductory trainings are for everyone. Track and progress. Public health approach. It goes on and on, people. See, there's even faith, spiritual, and religious communities, an educator module, 4 steps to receive credits. You complete the training, register with CDC's training and continuing education online system. Search WB 4635 for the introductory modules. Then to complete the post test and evaluation accessible. So I think this is really. I'm going to click on this so you see what it does. To start here, that's where you go to overview of public health approach to preventing ACE modules. You would begin right here. Pretty well like this, y'all. The social norms strive to produce youth violence. So you go like this, striving to reduce youth violence. Then their success stories, of course, are an important tool for showcasing your community's hard work and positive results. Use this tool to easily build and share your violence prevention successes. Story templates allow you to showcase your impact, process, outcomes, and lessons learned. Understanding evidence, balance indicators. That's a bot. Let me look at that. Let us look at that. Sorry, I love finding new tools, everyone. Violence is a serious public health problem that can affect anyone at any age, at any time of our lives. There is a violence indicator interactive guide and database. So if I were y'all, I would get on here, step-by-step guide, and there's a violence indicator tool. Click here or click here, whichever one. The roadmap to help start to identify and select the best measures to evaluate your violence prevention initiatives. I hope that y'all find these links, tools, and training. There's prevention indicators. I'm going to close some of them out. Sorry. Okay. So here's where the policy of action, evidence-based approach, preventing child abuse and neglect. Child abuse and neglect affects countless families across the country, regardless of geography, ethnicity, or income. Adverse childhood experiences can not only harm a child while young, but have a significant impact on social and health issues later in life as an adult. Thankfully, safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments are shown to help families thrive and prevent child abuse and neglect. There's also preventing intimate partner violence, preventing sexual violence, preventing suicide, preventing youth violence, social norms, violence prevention fundamentals. And I want to be sure there was something I had copied earlier. And let me show y'all this. I'm going to stop sharing the page, but okay. It's like, look at the bottom right there. The National, let me go like this, Maternal Mental Healthline provides free, confidential, 24/7 emotional support. This is for mothers, new mothers and stuff. Emotional support resources and referrals to pregnant and postpartum individuals facing mental health challenges and their loved ones. Counselors offer support by phone and text in English and Spanish. Interpreter services are available in 60 additional languages. And it's got it scrolling at the bottom of the page right there. For help when it's needed, call or text 1-833-943-5646 or 1-833-9-HELP for moms. The TTY, which is hearing impaired or seeing impaired, users can use a preferred relay system or dial 711 and then 1-833-943-5746. I hope all this information has helped y'all. Out there, get to know. I hope you're doing good. Predator. Thank you so much. Good to see ya. There's a lot of information out there, but sometimes finding it's the right one. That's why I'm hoping that the links that I provide at the bottom, scrolling sometimes and here some of the times. Yeah, what T-shirt is going to be that you'll want to do it? Oh, with your name on it? Well, thank y'all so much. I appreciate y'all. And remember, tomorrow it's going to be a big ordeal, so I hope to see each and every one of y'all here because I think maybe after he does a couple of things here, maybe he'll be able to get on errands and tell a little bit about himself as well, since they tried to traffic him from age 6 on what happened with that. So he was not trafficked. He actually fought it. He'll be on here tomorrow to be able to explain, and there is a lot of information that you're going to probably be going, it's going to be unbelievable. Y'all get prepared for that. And please be very supportive to my friend Blackstone Lawyer. He comes in tomorrow at noon. I want to say thank y'all and God bless y'all.